Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Hilda, your tech sis and business analyst coach. Today I'm diving into something fundamental for every aspiring business analyst, which is requirements analysis. This isn't just theory. This is about how you take a business need, break it down, analyze it, and make sure it is ready for the tech team. I'm going to be walking you through techniques, tools, and tips that will help you actually do the job of a business analyst. So here's what we're going to be covering today. I'm going to start by defining what requirements analysis is and why it is crucial. Then I will explore different techniques for gathering, regarding, and analyzing requirements, including modeling techniques with examples. So I will also be wrapping it up with practical use cases, best practices, and then you can leave questions for me in my comment section. So let's begin by understanding what requirements analysis is. Requirement analysis is a structured process that helps us understand what a business or user truly needs from a system or a process. Think of it like this. A stakeholder might say, we need a faster system. But what does faster really mean? Requirement analysis helps us to unpack vague statements like that into specific, measurable needs. The process starts with asking good questions and listening carefully. Then organize what we've heard, removing contradictions, and then documenting those needs clearly. The documentation can be in the form of user stories, process flows, or requirement specifications. The final step, requirement analysis, is making sure everyone agrees on what's been captured. This continuous feedback and validation ensures that the development team builds the right thing, not just what they thought the business wanted. So now that we know what that is, let's talk about why it is important. Why is requirement analysis important? You might wonder why we spend so much time on analysis. It is because unclear or misunderstood requirements are one of the top reasons projects fail. Without a clear understanding of what needs to be built, teams waste time building the wrong thing, which can lead to missed deadlines, budget overruns, and unhappy stakeholders, which we do not want that. Requirement analysis helps to reduce the risk by ensuring we understand what success looks like from the very beginning of the project. It also helps teams to stay focused and avoid scope creep, those little extra features that sneak into projects and then blow up the timeline. Yes, those are scope creeps. Plus, good requirement makes testing easier because we know exactly what we're supposed to be testing and validating. In short, when requirement analysis is done well, it sets the entire project or product up for success. So now that we understand the importance of requirement analysis, how do we actually gather these requirements? So let's look at the techniques that we use in gathering requirements. Now let's talk about what we actually gather with requirements. These are called elicitation techniques. Each method has its own strengths depending on the context. For example, interviews are great for deep dives with individuals, especially subject matter experts. Workshops works well when you need alignment among multiple stakeholders. Surveys and questionnaires lets you quickly gather opinions from a larger group of people, while observation or job shadowing helps you to see how things really work. Because sometimes what people say and what they do not match. You might ask somebody, walk me through a day in your life. They might just tell you a few steps, but that does not cover every single thing they do in their lives until maybe you spend time with them. Then you can notice the gaps in what they told you. Then we go to document analysis, which is very useful when there is already existing materials that you can review. So for example, if you are in a project for an upgrade to a 2.0 from a 1.0, there has to be documentation regarding what was done in the 1.0. So you can always go back and look at that document from 1.0 and then try to compare with what is trying to be achieved for 2.0 to see the difference. Maybe it's like a feature upgrade. You would see that what 1.0 offered is now a better version of what 2.0 would be offering, a better version of what 1.0 had offered. So that's like an example of an upgrade project, and you can always go back to document, analyze it for review because it has been done before. And then we go to brainstorming sections, which are great for generating ideas when starting from scratch. So to make this even more real, I'm going to be walking you through a live example of elicitation in action. Now, I used interview on this project because I was trying to understand appointment scheduling needs for hospital administration. So during the structured interview with the hospital admin, I started by asking open-ended questions like, walk me through your typical day and what challenges do you face with scheduling. From this, I was able to uncover that they were manually rescheduling dozens of appointments each week and often forgot to send reminders to patients. So I took note of these pain points and then converted them into requirements for bulk rescheduling and automated appointment reminders. At the end of my interview with the hospital admin, I repeated back the key points to the stakeholder to confirm accuracy, that I heard what they told me and I heard correctly. This example shows you how powerful a simple interview can be when it's guided by curiosity, good listening skills, and a structured documentation. So once we have gathered those insights, the next step is to record them clearly and in a structured format. So let's look at how we can do that as business analysts. So once the raw information is gathered from stakeholders, there is need for you to organize and document it. This step is crucial because clear and well-documented requirements keeps everyone aligned and reduce rework later in the project. In agile projects, we commonly use user stories. User stories, they're short, simple statements written from the user's point of view. Then in a traditional waterfall environment, use cases are used. The use cases go a bit deeper and outline detailed steps of interactions. In a more traditional environment such as waterfall, a business requirement document or BRD gives a formal overview of all the project needs. Also, we use tools like Portal Backlog to track work items and acceptance criteria to define what's done looks like. Another helpful tool in a traditional waterfall environment will be traceability matrix, which links each requirement back to the business goal and the testing plan, making sure that nothing is missed. So, no matter what format you're using, your goal is the same, and no matter what format you're using in the environment, Agile or Waterfall, it is the same goal. So, you need to just write it down in a way that is easy to understand, easy to test, and aligned with what stakeholders are expected. Now that we've got our requirements recorded, let's take a step further and analyze them for completeness and for accuracy. Analysis is where we take a step back and ask, does this all make sense? It is not just about what the stakeholders said. It is about what is practical, aligned to the goals, and achievable within scope. So first, we look for gaps. Are any steps missing in the process? Are we assuming something that hasn't been stated? Then you check for conflicts. Maybe, for example, two teams want the same field labeled differently. These kind of clashes need to be resolved early in the project. Then you prioritize the requirements. Not every requirement is equally important. Identifying which ones are critical helps with planning. So we use the techniques called MOSCO: must have, should have, could have, and won't have to guide requirement prioritization. Then you have to clarify scope. Most projects fail when they try to do everything at the same time. So to make sure that we are focused on what is needed for now and what can be tackled for later, next you have to validate everything with stakeholders, usually in a meeting or through documentation walkthroughs. Finally, using models like diagrams or charts gives us another way to spot gaps or overlaps visually. Models simplify complex information and make sure nothing gets lost in translation. This careful analysis is what will turn a list of ideas into a strong foundation for design development and for testing. Now, let's look at how modeling helps to bring all of this to life visually. Modeling is one of the most effective ways to communicate complex requirements. These diagrams and visuals are powerful because they help everyone, whether you are technical or you're non-technical, you will be able to see the bigger picture through visuals. Modeling techniques such as process flows, like those using BPMN, shows the order and logic behind tasks, who does what and in what order. Then the data flow diagrams focus on how information moves between systems, especially helpful when integrating multiple tools or platforms. And then the use case diagram will help you to illustrate how different users interact with a system, which helps to clarify what the system is expected to do. Then we have wireframes and mockups, which will help to bring your ideas to life visually. They are early versions of what a screen or an application might look like. And then we have the ERDs, which will help you to define how data is structured and is very helpful for designing databases or understanding what fields and tables are needed. And then we have the swim lane diagrams. It helps separate tasks across departments, which is great for spotting inefficiencies or handoff problems. So you don't need to master all of these at once, but knowing which one to use for what situation is going to be a game changer for you as a business analyst. So let's walk through a real world example where modeling revealed insights than what interviews alone could not reveal. So I'm going to be taking through an example for one of my past project. So in this project, it was for a patient check-in process in a clinic. I was trying to analyze the check-in process, and then at first what I did, I had a list of steps, but it wasn't clear who was responsible for each action. So I created a swim lane diagram. A swim lane diagram, let me give you a more simpler picture. When you watch the Olympics or any swimming competition, you see each of the athletes are in their different lanes. Those are swim lanes. Okay? So each person is in their lane and they're going to be performing their own task, running their own race. So I created a swim lane diagram. In this diagram, I separated the process across 3 swim lanes. So 1 swim lane was for the receptionist, and 1 for the nurse, and 1 for the clinic's check-in system. As I mapped out the steps, I noticed there were several issues. For example, patients were waiting too long because the nurses wasn't notified promptly after check-in. I also saw that both the receptionist and the nurse were entering patients' details into different systems, creating duplications. The diagram helped me to visualize where this overlaps and where the delays were coming from. So based on this model, I recommended automating the notification to the nurse and integrating the check-in form with the patient record system. It also helped me to propose change in responsibilities, like having only the receptionist enter the data to reduce redundancy. So this is the power of modeling. It uncovers inefficiencies and opportunities for improvement that might be missed in writing notes or verbal descriptions. Now that we have got all our requirements recorded, let me take it a step further and analyze them for completeness and for accuracy. So to be effective, you have to follow best practices like keeping stakeholders engaged, simplifying your documentation, and validating often. Visuals help everyone get on the same page, and collaboration prevents costly assumptions. So make sure that you revisit your requirements regularly, especially in long projects, and always aim for clarity over complexity. If a requirement cannot be explained in a plain language, it probably needs to be reworked. Also, involve cross-functional teams during discussions to catch edge cases early in the project. That being said, there are also common mistakes we want to avoid. Let's take a look. Watch out for these traps. They are very common, more than you can think. First, don't overlook the quiet stakeholders. Just because someone isn't vocal doesn't mean they don't have valuable points. Sometimes the people closest to the project or the work aren't the loudest in meetings. Then, rushing through elicitation often will lead you to incomplete or misunderstood requirements. So take the time to ask follow-up questions and dig deeper. Vague requirements are not they are another big issue. Statements like the system should be user-friendly. It's not clear, it's vague, and they are very open to interpretation, and it's hard to build against. So be specific and measurable wherever possible when it comes to requirements. Also, don't skip validation. It is not just a final step, it should happen regularly, even during early draft of your documents. So make sure you consider more than just the ideal scenario. Ask what happens if something goes wrong. That is where edge cases come in. Finally, track changes. Requirements evolve. And if you are not managing those changes carefully, things will fall through the cracks. So to wrap everything up, I'm going to give you a quick recap of what we've covered today regarding requirement analysis. Requirement analysis is a foundational skill that drives the success of a project outcome. It is not just about gathering information. It is about understanding, organizing, and validating it in a way that everyone can align with. We've talked about the different elicitation techniques like interviews and observation, and how to properly record what you learn using formats like user stories and use cases, and then how to analyze requirements to find gaps and conflicts. I also covered modeling, an incredibly useful way to bring clarity through visuals. And finally, I touched on the best practices and common pitfalls that can either strengthen or derail your process. So I want to thank you for joining me. Now I would love to hear your questions in my comment section, or even your experience with requirement analysis if you are already in your business analyst journey. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like, comment, or share with someone new to business analysis. Subscribe for more beginner-friendly breakdowns, templates, and tutorials, and keep practicing, because the best analysts are made through real-world experience.